We'll have the Waikura Linwood-Central-Heathcote community, Sally Buck.
Socks.
Thank you. I'm trying to be a professional.
And the deputy chair as well.
I just want to match my scarf, I know.
Jake. Right, good morning, welcome.
Good morning, councillors and Mayor. Thank you very much for the opportunity today to make our submission to you, to the draft annual plan. We held a planning workshop back in end of January to take stock of the board priorities and the progress made against the board plan. So we put forward our ideas and we've stuck to these pretty much since. The board confirms the support from the council for its priority projects, the Linwood Pool, Bay skate park, beg pardon, and the suburban master plans, the Ferry Road, Sydenham, Sumner and Main Road and Linwood Village master plans. We also support the council funding of $0.5 million for a new footpath on Richmond Hill that will be completed with the other works planned on Richmond Hill. So you've already got those in the budget and the long-term plan, and we thank you very much for keeping them on the budget. We have two major, I think next slide. We have two major long-term projects for the eastern parts of the city that lie in our board area. And I did talk briefly to you about these at the council meeting last time I was here. The first one is Greening the East project, and it's a significant board project proposed in the current community board plan. In the council's annual plan of last year, you set aside $10,000 for a board project entitled Greening the East. This is still sitting there as far as we know. The project kaupapa is softening and greening the concrete jungle, and the board have identified some quick wins. That is planting trees in some of the streets that run from Barbados Street to Linwood Ave on the eastern side of the city, and also increasing green space within the inner city east, but that might be a bit more long term. The board will be contributing discretionary response funding to get this project into action, plus the $10,000 that we got from you last year. This community has huge community backing and was and backing from the whole city in actual fact when they did the What's the Big Idea project. Planting trees was probably one of the biggest things, and greening the city was one of the biggest things that came to the top in that consultation. And it should also be a priority for council, given the study that was done in 2017 called the Christchurch Tree Canopy Study. And this study identified this exact area as to be the most lacking in trees in the city. The board would like the council to confirm the $10,000 funding from last year's LTP, that it will remain as OPEX expenditure to be called upon when the project activity requires it. And that's the action we'd like from this one. The other major project is Opawaho to Ihutai project, or Lower Heathcote Catchment Plan. And this is the development of an integrated catchment plan for the Heathcote River from the Opawa Road Bridge to the Ferrymead Bridge, including the Woolston Cut. The project is currently in its early stages, with a public meeting for members of the community that are interested in the health and future of the Heathcote River planned for later today at 4:30. Today we're having that public meeting. The community board is seeking resources required to support this project as it evolves. We see it as a long-term project like the Mid-Heathcote plan, and so we would like you to know that these two plans are our big plans for this part of the city. Other projects, the Central City Shuttle. The board advocates for the Central City Shuttle to return to the city to enable the community to have a way and means to travel in the central city easily, and to encourage people to leave their cars on the outskirts of the city and use the shuttle to get inside the avenues for work or play. a dog-friendly space in the central city. The board recognises that there's a need to attract a range of residents into the central city, and people with dogs will not move into the central city unless they actually can take their dog with them. So we think of dog socialising, people socialising spaces within the central city. So they're not huge dog parks as you know it, or any type of dog park as you've probably ever seen it in Christchurch yet. They're small spaces for people and dogs to socialise. The board has sought ways of working with council staff working on the Central City Action Plan to progress this matter. The action we would like is the board would like council to find a small piece of council land to be specifically allocated to implementing a dog-friendly space within the Central City. Bromley odours. The board supports the efforts of Environment Canterbury and council staff to identify the sources of the odours and continue to work with the board to find solutions to the community issues on this matter. Basically, some parts of Bromley are very smelly.
So something I'm particularly passionate about is the developer contribution rebate scheme. The board is questioning whether the scheme is truly a catalyst for development in the CBD, and would like to see another look at that. Also, along with that is we'd like to see that that money from this scheme in future be tagged to the areas in which development is taking place. In my constituency in particular, in Central, we're battling with lots of crummy Williamscourt properties being knocked up, and whether they know it or not, that the ratepayer is paying huge amounts of money to subsidise these developments, over $2.6 million to Williamscourt alone as a developer, and $8 million in total. So,
On that subject too, the development contribution scheme seems to be based on growth, and there's an issue in terms of, and so therefore enormous amounts of it go to greenfields. And yet when we have growth in the inner city and in brownfields areas, it doesn't seem to actually be able to take account of that and so easily because of what exists in the area already. So actually, in actual fact, I think you need to be looking at the actual policy itself in terms of how do you get more contributions into brownfields as opposed to greenfields.
cool.
Do you want to do the rest of it, Senior Starter?
Sure. I'll just briefly mention, because we must be running up to time, Cutler Park renewal. This is something the local residents are really keen on seeing. It's quite, and also Buckham Park in Spraydon, Sydenham area, Spraydon, Sydenham, and Wyon streets as well.
Wine and Dacre streets. They were actually on the plan for renewal, weren't they? But they seem to have disappeared. I think they were on the long-term plan before.
The board also supports Coastal Burwood, the Coastal Burwood Board in their submission to reinstate funding for the midges control program that currently isn't allocated.
Any questions?
Yeah, Tim.
Thank you both. Although we lost our lovely Sydenham in the shake-up from central government, Buchan Park was obviously on our radar for a long time. There are a lot more social housing in that area in lower decile, and I think that playground is essential, especially with the new Fletcher's development, which has obviously taken far too long, but we won't go there. So thank you very much for keeping a focus on that park. It is important to that community, and I think from our chair and deputy chair there, you'll have our full support from the board. So thank you
We
if
would
you need
really
it.
like. I think it was actually due to go ahead, but somehow in the shake-up, it got lost. Buchan Park did. So I think that it was due actually the year after or something to be redone. But that goes also back to if Fletcher's are doing a whole lot of development in there, where are the development contributions for that going to? They don't seem to be able to get those contributions back into brownfields like you can into greenfields, because they'll say, actually, it's a bit hard to explain at the moment, but if you look at your policy, basically greenfields get too much of those development contributions compared to brownfields development, yeah. And so that could actually have funded that renewal of that park.
Because those kind of the newer developments in the old areas are, I think, kind of neglected, and Buchan Park's been. But thank you, and please keep focused on.
Yeah.
Glenn?
Thank you. The Midges money is there, and the Coastal Board submission just before confirmed that. I think there may have been a little wee accounting glitch.
It was more like we were supporting you in your bid for that money. It's not that we were asking for money or anything like that. We were only supporting your bid.
And did you know about the DC rebates for social housing that exists? That's a new policy
Sorry?
for social housing
No,
providers?
I didn't know
Okay.
of that. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Mm.
So it's all social housing, it doesn't matter where it is, it's not just limited to the CBD. James?
Nice. Thank you, and thank you for the submission. Just noting on the development contributions one there, I note that the board wants to increase the development cost inside your ward, which would proportionally increase the purchase price of the housing to the consumer. But what do you mean tag the contribution? I don't understand.
We were not asking for. You were asking.
It does say that. Yep.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah.
So when if I'll just continue on that one. Request the council tag the contribution to the activity. I'm just wondering what is that, so I can get my head around what that exactly means. What do you mean tag the contribution to the community? Because right now there isn't a contribution.
Yeah.
That isn't part that I'm particularly passionate about. I just don't like the contribution, the rebate scheme as a whole,
Yes.
and I don't buy into your argument that in fact the cost of the housing would necessarily go
It's
up.
economics. It's a development cost.
I think
So a development cost translates
from our
into
point
what
of view,
the
we can
price
see
is.
that 60% or something of the Williams Court housing has been sold to people to like one group, and so I don't know if your argument would actually hold, and that the cost of housing would go up because basically it's Airbnb type of.
Yeah.
but
When
someone's
you're giving away $8 million,
I don't think we need to get into
one
that so
has
much.
to be really cautious
Yeah.
when one is targeting specific developers.
Yeah,
So,
I'd
there
rather
is
we
no
leave
protection
that
in
one,
this
and
environment.
I respect your view on that.
And I just want to say, can people be very careful? It's better to speak in general terms rather than identify specific developers.
My
I think
question at
the
this time is, what do you
submission
mean
from
by
the
the
community
tagging, though?
board is
'Cause
that they don't support the
tag it.
development contributions rebate scheme, full stop. So that's the submission from the community board, and we have to accept that that's the submission from the community board.
And I most certainly do. It's just and I respect that and I respect the board's views. It's just I just want some clarity on what you mean by the tagging the contribution, just so I have clarity around that. Do you mean that any development contributions, if they were charged in future, only be spent within that ward? Is that what that?
I have no preference on that one. That was not part of the submission that I was.
Okay.
We were
No, but he's
talking
just
about.
asking
we
what
were
the
talking
submission
about-
means, and it's a fair question.
But
If the scheme is
that's my
catalysing
I think your
development,
interpretation of that is correct in terms
Cool.
of how it's written.
Thank you. Cheers, Jack.
Yeah.
We were talking about the development contributions. When people do developments, they put a contribution in, but that policy itself allows a lot more for greenfields than it does for brownfields development. That was a separate part of this that came out of it more recently.
I'll be blunt. When this submission is coming together, offhand remarks are made by individual members. Staff do their best to interpret and write the submission up. The main point and the takeaway point is that we would like to see a greater, more stringent and a more thorough look at the scheme to make sure, in fact, it is actually a catalyst for development in the CBD.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
and the type of development is what you're raising. Yeah. Yanni?
Thank you. Just a point of clarification. My understanding at the community board is that and really 2.3.4 is actually two separate submission points. One is around the DC's rebate scheme and what incentive that's providing to development in the central city. The second one is places like Waltham, for example, where we've seen huge intensification of housing, and Waltham Playground is not renewed, isn't expanded. The crest is simply that we put some projects or policies in place where if people are spending zillions of dollars in Waltham for intensive housing, that actually there's some commitment to go back into the local park to actually expand it to cater for the new demand that's
And it would have been
rising.
really helpful if the community board had separated it out
Yep.
from a heading,
So-
development contributions rebate scheme.
Yep.
So
So
it is not
councils
the
didn't
rebate
partake
scheme
in
that
the
you're talking about. You're
board
actually
submission.
talking about whether the development contributions scheme itself can be reviewed for
That's what I
allocation.
said.
So they're
it's
two
That's
separate
what I said right at the
submissions.
start. Thank you for clarifying that and reaffirming that. So the other one, for example, there's other industrial, what were greenfields that have been turned into brownfields, where again you've got that same issue around places like Ferrymead, for example, where some of the growth should be going back into things like cleaning up the river or dealing with the increased development. So that was, I think, quite a significant thing. I just wanted to ask the board if, for example, I know Linwood Park has been something that the board's been really keen on, and my understanding is that budget's now not aligned with the pool, and so whether you would support a synergy around the pool and the park being done, considered at the same time.
This is your community board, don't you?
Yeah.
Sally.
Councillors are allowed to use
I
whatever
think
license
we're
to
just so
encourage
focused.
comment.
We're so focused on getting that pool finished, and I think the other one will come when we've finished it, because there'll be a lot of stuff goes on when they're building that you'll have to, then clean up and replant and get the car parks all there, and so I feel that it's sort of like a step after. More than let's get that pool finished. We've got a date given to us, like early 2021 or something opening. So, let's see it happen.
So they've stopped working with that.
Andrew.
Thank you. 2.3.1 in your submission. I'm pleased to see priority being given by the board to the Lower Heathcote catchment plan. Couple of questions. Are you aware of the Littleton Harbour whole of catchment management plan, which looks very similar to what you're proposing here and the way that we engage the community there? Certainly, I think the Banks Peninsula Board would be happy to share some of our experience with you if you like. And then secondly, the resources required to support the project. Are you able to expand a little bit more on what you expect those resources might be and what you actually want us to do through this annual plan to make that happen?
Well, at the moment, there's little projects going on. Roymata just got that bit of river beside them in Radley Park there. And then there's other ones going on further down the river. We're trying to get it sort of an integrated plan. But in actual fact, the money often doesn't have to be very great, because we've got a group of people trying to get a walking track beside the Heathcote River, and all they want is sort of like the help to get a bit of, track material, not necessarily concrete, but that stuff you put on to make a track. And so it's more like getting the plan and then just doing, trying to get bits of it done every year. I see it as a long-term thing. I don't see it's going to happen in the next 3 years. So, and the board will put its own money towards it as well. We see this as, the Heathcote River could be as pleasant, as nice to walk around like the Avon River.
Have you had your public meeting yet?
4:30 today.
It's 4:30 today. Very good.
Yeah.
I think we'll all be here, Yanni. Yes, well, anyway. Jimmy.
One question. 2.3.2, the door friendly space in the central city. So at the moment, whether have any the rates, the impact on this annual plan, or already under the central city action plan, or seeking additional funding?
Well, we were, what's the group that we were working with to try and get this to happen, Hanui? Under the Central City Plan already. What's the group called? Project what? Project 8011 is what we're hoping to work with. I mean, like anything, I guess, where council land, if council had some land, it wouldn't be great cost if they had land that they could actually use this for. I think people don't realise how small a space we're looking at. You only have to go online and see what they, in Europe, where they have them in Central City, these spaces, They're not very big at all. And it makes all the difference in terms of, you know, they're not hugely fenced, they're not, everything that they require of a dog park is not necessary.
Okay. Right, well, thank you very much. It's much appreciated, and obviously, again, another community board's put in a lot of hard work, so thank you.